So this is, I'll start off, okay? I'm just beginning. Hello, everyone. I am Rafael, aka Nihiranan. I have Mr. Jayant Bhandari with me. He is an investor, and he's one of the few people who has the guts to say that India has no chance. And I'm really proud to be interviewing him here. And it's a thing that I've been saying for years. And it's just that he has the guts to say it openly, and I'd like to have this discussion with him. So it's best if you introduce yourself, sir. How are you? Where are you? And who are you?
Rafael, see, one good thing about me is that I don't live in India. Uh, if you
Mhm.
live in India, you need all kinds of connections and you have to please everyone. You have to grovel and kowtow in front of the bureaucrats and brain dead politicians. If you
Mhm.
don't do any of those things, your electricity goes off, your water connection stops working. You face all kinds of problems. So the good thing about me is that I left this country and I don't keep anything in this country. So
Mhm.
when you say I have the guts, yes, I have the guts, but also more importantly, I'm protected in a way that I don't live in this country. I don't uh, do much business in this country. I do advise some companies on investing in India, but I'm always in the background. The only people I deal with are the people who are my clients in North America. So I keep myself
Mhm.
away from the venality, corruption, and absolute dysfunctionality of this country, except that I do travel in India.
Mhm. All right. So now I just have to ask you that have you been hearing that the country is slightly less dysfunctional or slightly more dysfunctional over the years that you've been abroad?
Uh,
Like,
Rafael,
yeah.
Rafael, I have surprisingly, for one reason, been in contact with bureaucrats and politicians in the country for the last 8 months. And I tell you that India is far, far, far worse than I thought it was when I left India in 2003. India is
Mhm.
getting not just increasingly dysfunctional, but at this time, it is getting dysfunctional very rapidly at an increasing pace. India is literally falling apart in front of your eyes. What you meet in the institutions today are completely brain dead people. Now, corruption was bad enough, but now you have brain dead people. And sometimes when I'm in front of them, I wonder if I'm talking with a monkey or if I'm talking with a human being. So that's the kind of changes that have happened institutionally in the country today.
That is very very true. Now, walk me through the life. Okay, let's talk about a Punjabi farmer. Right, he cannot get to Canada or America legally. He has to go through the long route. It takes about 6 months to go via container. He is going through the jungles of Mexico. But what's interesting is he has 25 lakhs to spend to go through the illegal route. Okay, and then he goes there, becomes a waiter, lives in a basement, okay, lives a horrible life, essentially like slave labor. Can you explain to me what is so bad, about India? And that the guy who has 25 lakhs in a village is willing to still run away, go into debt, risk never reaching America. Can you explain to me this mindset?
I would rather, Rafael, live in a basement in Canada than be a billionaire in India. Okay.
Right,
I would rather be a sweeper in Canada than be a higher status manager in India. You
right,
are a slave in the hellhole of India. You have no private life and you are constantly firefighting and you are constantly stressed. I would rather have the peace of mind as a sweeper in Canada because I know that even as a sweeper, I'm respected as an individual. The police
true.
cannot stop me and beat me up and take me to the police station in Canada. They have to deal with me respectfully, irrespective
Mhm.
of who I am. If you end up going
Right.
to the police station in India, the first question they will ask you, irrespective of where you are, even in the best part of the country, which is Bombay or perhaps Surat, the first question they
Right.
will ask you is, who are you? what do you do? And basically, they want to figure out what your connections
Yeah.
are. Okay.
Correct.
Now,
Yes.
India is one of the most stressed society on the planet.
Mhm.
People
That is true.
are sick in this country. They constantly eat comfort food. My American friend who is currently in India tells me that everything Indian eats are snacky. It's
Okay.
Indians only eat snacks, nothing else. The nothing works in this country. When you come to India for a slightly longer time, you realize that your all day is spent not producing wealth, not being productive, but firefighting, getting things right, getting your address changed in the banking system, or making sure something this thing goes right, and this person promised to come and didn't come, those kind of things. So I can
Mhm.
fully understand why a Punjabi, entrepreneurial Punjabi and an entrepreneurial Gujarati wants to spend 25 lakh rupees to risk his life to go to Canada. Now, at one point of time, Rafael, I would have sold my kidney to go to the UK, to go to the West. I was that desperate. But here is the issue. The problem is that a lot of these people who emigrate from India do not prepare themselves for emigration. They think
Yeah.
Canada is some kind of magic wand, which in their mind means that if they went to Canada, somehow prosperity would just fall on in their lives. That's not going to
Correct.
happen. You have to work really hard and you have to prepare yourself, which means that you should educate yourself before you leave India. If you do not do that, you will work as a sweeper, which is a lot better than what you have here. But would you
Right.
even be able to get to Canada? Because crossing the Mexican border is not easy. And you know, the good thing is you pointed out one correct thing. A lot of people crossing the Mexican borders are actually Indians.
Yes. That is true. That is true. And it's mostly Indians. Like we are going there in droves. Okay. Last year, I think we had 1,60,000 people, and I am sure it reaches 3.5 lakhs. And considering the number that have already gone there, the ones that are working there, that are trying for a visa. These are just the numbers that have gotten foreign visa, foreign passports that we know of. Okay. We are not even counting the golden visas for Dubai, or the permanent visas for Canada. So it is really like it has reached a point where people are desperate. Do you think that some of these people are could possibly be better off in India in a certain way? Let's say, because when you have money in India, and firstly, do you admit that things are cheap in India? Would you say that? Really cheap?
Well, yes and no. Yes and no. Let's say the cost of food is one third of what it is in Canada.
Yes.
However, you earn about 50 to 70 times more in Canada.
Uh,
Okay.
right.
The the health services in India are unpredictable and extremely expensive. Maybe they are again one third of the price in one third of what it would cost in a Western country. But in Canada, you get it free because you pay your taxes to cover you for your medical expenses. So the thing is, Rafael, that when I am in India, I have to tell someone in my family that I'm going to a certain place, because if something goes wrong between here and there, no one is going to look after me. The police van won't take me to the hospital. The ambulance won't take me to the hospital. In Canada or the US, or for that matter, in any Western country, or even in China, actually, if you have a problem, there is an ambulance within 3 minutes to take you to the hospital. So, that is a big difference, that you have a peace of mind when you are in a Western country.
True, true, very true, very true. What do you say? Because see, I know that most of the big businessmen, okay, they have passports that are Irish passports, or English passports. They don't tell us. Even the biggest actors, they have passports of Dubai, etc. And they keep it's a very well known secret. Okay, but do you think India is a great place to take advantage of, in the sense of stuff is cheap? Okay, you have money, you're paying minimal tax, and because you're doing every fraud possible and bribing every officer possible. So do you think that it's a great place to take advantage of? Like it's a great place to live for someone with above a certain net worth?
Well, so listen, this is what I do when I visit India and when I'm by myself. I can get a nice room somewhere in a resort or in a hotel at a very much cheaper price than I would pay in the Western country. I so if I'm so yes, you can live a relatively inexpensive life and get a lot of facilities in this country at a very cheap price. But remember, your source of money is still in the Western society. If your source of the money wasn't in the Western society, India actually becomes an extremely expensive country. And if you have to deal with the world outside your gated community, India becomes an extremely expensive place. For example, Rafael, when I am in, even in China, when I'm in China or when I'm in other countries, I usually take the public transportation.
Right.
I spend something like 25 rupees or 40 rupees to go from one place to another. I don't hardly ever think of a taxi. Now, I tell you, I can't remember when I last took the public transportation bus in Bombay or in Delhi. Um,
Yes.
so I have to take an Uber or Ola. Now, remember that even Uber and Ola in the Western countries work perfectly. I call them, they come. But now,
Right.
and I'm sure you have experienced the same thing, if I call Ola in India, a minute
They
later, the
call you.
taxi driver calls me up and he wants to figure out where I'm going to go to so that he can see whether he wants to take me there or not. So the usual trick of Indians just come into play. That's how corrupt this country is. Now, I'm not even going
Yes.
to blame it all on the Ola driver because he has to bribe the police. He doesn't know where he's going. He's unprotected if he gets beaten up by the taxi drivers. So I'm not pointing blame at
Mhm.
him. All I'm saying is
Right.
that India is a shithole and nothing works in this country.
Okay. Now let's, because this is one question that I have been contemplating for the last 10 to 15 years. Okay. I remember, I think about 15, 17 years ago, there was an NRI uncle of mine, and he said, just leave India. There's no future for you here. And at that time, I disagreed. I was a bit of a deshbhakt. But as I realized, as I saw India, the way it was happening, I realized one thing: it is not really the fault of the politician. It does not come from them, because it is really the people. So why do you think? Like I've gone through the entire litany of excuses. I've asked they are, whether it was the Mughal rule, whether it was, we were just a mess at that, or over time, as we've been conquered by others, or we have, self-propagated this rubbish that we did. What exactly led to it? Like, can you go through the whole history that could lead to this attitude, or is it just the climate? I don't know.
Oh, no. Well, I mean, maybe it's the climate at the end of the day. Maybe it's the IQ and the genes of Indians. But Indians
Right.
are fundamentally servile people. They are a bunch of whiners and they have
Mhm.
no moral anchors. Now,
Right.
from a society like that, the only
Mhm.
people who can emerge into positions of power are psychopaths
Mhm.
because psychopaths give you uh, uh, so-called free resources. Psychopaths are what look most charming to you because you have no
Yes.
moral values to weigh these psychopaths against. So
Right.
this country is destined to be poor and wretched and is going to get worse because the institutions that the British left in this country are still
Mhm.
surviving in a very vague manner, and those are rapidly falling apart. So
Would you say?
this is fundamentally the problem of India. Now, if you go back 1,000 years, and this is something that sounds very strange to the Indian ears, and I'm, Rafael, no fan of Islam in any way whatsoever. I dislike Islam. But having said that, Islam was a positive contribution to India. That's how backward this country was. This is a fundamentally a tribal country of naked people.
Mm-hmm.
Islamic and Persian rulers brought in the concept of clothing, the concept of food. They brought in a concept of buildings. So uh, Islamic rulers were an improvement, but again, because of the indoctrination and propaganda we hear, we are so indoctrinated that we think that Mughal rulers were a negative for
Right.
India. But that's not correct. Indian rulers were much more exploitative, and that is exactly the reason why most Indians did not really care who ruled them,
Mm-hmm.
because Indian rulers were exploitative. Now, that does not mean Islam was a great religion or the Islamic rulers were good. It only meant that on a relative basis, they were better. And then
Right.
about 300, 400 years back, suddenly a lot improved suddenly for India. And those were uh, European colonizers and Christian
Right.
missionaries. Christian
Yes.
missionaries tried. Now, again, I am an atheist. I have all I'm doing is comparing relatively what India was and on all in what India became. Now, you are much younger than me, Rafael, but when I was studying in a school, absolutely everyone wanted to go to a missionary school. Missionaries
Yeah.
set up the backbone of the Indian schooling system. Even
True, true, true.
today, the Roman Catholics provide the
Hmm.
basic backbone of the Indian schooling system. It was a sign of status to go to a missionary school. Now,
Absolutely, it's still today because the way they teach, you see, the way they even just English, or even just the attitude, the elite attitude that they give is of a different class. Like it's not even about English. It's just a thought process, which is completely different, and which Indians refuse to, they refuse to adapt. Why would you say that? Like, why do Indians just refuse to adapt a basic materialistic. I mean, if you see the Western thought process, it is materialistic, fair enough. But then the point is, you cannot run after materialism with a certain kind of thought process. So we are neither on the side of material, nor truly on the side of spirituality. Okay, although we think we are very spiritual, we are somewhere in the middle. Where exactly are we?
well, I think I disagree with you. I think Indians are among the least spiritual people I have seen on the planet. Uh, Maybe sub-Saharan Africans are similar, and maybe parts of Latin America is similar, but Indians are among the least spiritual people on the planet. And they are also
Okay.
among the most materialistic people on the planet. Now,
Right.
remember, the definition of materialism is not whether you have access to resources or not. The definition of
Mhm.
materialism is your attitude towards the material. The fact that you
Correct.
are slave of money and slave of the
Mhm.
material. Every Indians com- compare and count everything based on money. They are obsessed with acquiring money. So they are an extremely materialistic people, and they are very low in spirituality. Now you can ask me, but so many Indians go to these cult leaders, so they must be seeking spirituality, even if those cult leaders are bad. But no, they are not seeking spirituality. They are looking for catharsis. They are looking for an escape from the stress of their lives. And the problem is that Indian mind is extraordinarily irrational. And because it's extraordinarily irrational, it faces an existential crisis because there are no anchors, there are no solid foundations that the Indian psyche sits on. So what it needs is escape from the realities of life, and escape and some kind of solid anchors, even though they are not solid anchors of the cult leaders. But he wants to at least consider that he has some solid leaders anchors so that he can survive another day.
Correct, correct, correct. And even if they go to those babas or whatever, they are going to look for money basically. I mean, they are saying yes, we want spirituality and all, but hamara bhala kar do, हमारा बेटा पैदा करो. I have there's literally this Swami. I'd rather not name him, but he's a Swami of our community, and he's a really cool guy. Like when he came, he was extremely cool. Like he was into karate. He was good thought process. He was an engineer for many years, and then something happened, and he had to come back. And I'm quite sure that he's not really into the whole money thing. He came there and he's like, I genuinely want to help. And the man aged. He aged within 10 years. I've seen the man become white hair, And and people come up to him and they'll be like, they'll be like, I'm marrying from outside the community. I'd like to take your permission, that kind of stuff. And he's like, I'm trying to tell you about spirituality. I'm trying to talk about God. I'm trying to talk about your life. And all you ask me are these material things. So, when you say Indians are materialistic, I completely agree. But they're materialistic in a very, I want respect kind of way. I want everyone else to agree with what my materialism is. Would you say that's right?
Well, listen, when any person goes to the temple, he goes to bribe the god here. It
Yes,
does
yes.
not matter which kind of temple it is. All this do want from the god is not that to go there and think about some moral values or think about how to transact and interact with people in the society or what is good for the world or for the country. What they do is that they put a 500 rupee note in the box in the temple, bribing God to get something in later in the next few days. Now,
Mhm.
Rafael, I went to one of the top engineering schools in India, and it was exactly the same. The engineering students who were supposed to be scientifically minded did exactly the same thing. They went to some kind of pilgrimage
Mhm.
or promised to do something for the god if the god gave them a certain amount of returns in terms of their mark sheet. So this is how irrational and corrupt the Indian mind is. And Rafael, I worked in this country for close to let's say 20 years. And well, all my childhood I worked with my dad. So I've worked all my life. And then as
Mhm.
an adult, I worked for about 14 years in this country. And I
Wow.
only saw things worsening, Indian mind becoming more irrational. And remember this thing
Mhm.
before I end this. The what I
Mhm.
have seen is that as Indians have become more educated, they have become
Yes,
more irrational.
yes,
It's
yes.
hard to understand this. The more educated they have become, the richer they have become, the more irrational they have become. And
Ah,
let me complete this. The problem is that the education sits on the
mhm.
foundations of irrationality. Education for them is not about understanding science, it's about
Right.
trying to get that paper. So all they do is learn everything by rote. And it is not, of course, learning. So it is a huge weight on their mind, and they are even more stressed and irrational as a product of their so called education.
Yes, yes. Oh, but what about in the Indians that go abroad? Like, do they continue this mindset? Because we were seeing this thing called very famous. It was about getting married, and you must have heard. I forgot the name actually. But Seema Auntie was there, and Seema Tapari, and she was matchmaking and stuff. And in that, the women, there was a woman who said, Indian woman, and she had children, etc. And she's telling her kids, she's like, I told my kids, I want 3 degrees, or I don't want to see your face. So that thing has continued. That's one issue. The second one is that we have started caste issues in the United States. There was the first caste case. So how does this continue, and do you think this goes from generation to generation in
So,
abroad, like with the different
so
thought process?
Rafael, I spend a lot of time in the Silicon Valley, and the apartment building that I live in, I spend my time in, has a Punjabi group, has a Malayali group, and there's a Tamil group. There are all kinds of
Mhm.
groups, and also
Yes.
subdivided into their caste groups. Muslims, Christians, and non other the so-called non-Hindu religion people
Mhm.
from India also follow the caste system. Okay, so they
Yes.
also have their own caste system. Indians fundamentally don't change. Um,
Mhm.
I know of Indian children asking their parents to come in their Mercedes or an expensive car to pick them up from the school. Now,
Oh,
the
wow.
Western mentality is to underplay it. More likely
Mhm.
than not, parents will go in a cheap car not to stand
Mhm.
out in front of other people because they want their
Oh,
kids to socialize, to fit in a nice sense, socially. But
yes.
Indians think in terms of a pecking order. Two Indians, when they meet, they are always
Mhm.
trying to compare within seconds. Every single interaction is whether I should address you as a sir or you should address me as a sir. So that's right away that happens in this country. Um,
That is
uh,
brilliant.
Indians overall are a negative contribution to the Western society. They do not fundamentally change because
Yes.
their basic instinct continues to be resource acquisition even when they go out to the West. They are
Yes.
not interested in ideas, they are not interested in philosophy, they are only interested in resources and status. And that is what is acts like termite destroying the culture of the Western society.
Correct. So do you? So how do you think? Walk me through this. Like now, Indians are going to go in droves there, okay? And as Canada empties out, as people have fewer children, they are going to go even more, and even more people are going to get permanent visas. And I just saw a list of the top 11 criminals in Canada. Nine are Indians. Well, I mean, of course, if you take the riffraff from Punjab, it's going to happen. So, walk me through how they are going to destroy society because it is going to happen. Like I feel the sun is setting on the west in some way, and I could partially blame it on Indians for sure. How do you think the whole collapse is going to happen socially, not economically?
Well, firstly, so let's look at Surrey, an area south of Vancouver, where I spent a fair bit of my time in Vancouver, and there's a town called Surrey. It's among the most
Mhm.
crime-prone places in Canada. Um,
Yes.
they are in schools. You have to be a part of a gang there. So
Oh, really?
yeah, you have to be a part of gang, otherwise no one will protect you. No girl
Mm.
will show an interest in you because girls are interested in crooks. That is what the
Mm.
basic instinct of Indian women are. They are not interested in men with moral values. They are interested in men who are strong and who can, uh, you know,
Protect them.
instinctively protect them. So
Right.
the problem is that it's a vicious cycle for Indians because Indians do not have moral anchors. Starts from
Mm.
schools. Now, when a crime
Yes.
happens in Surrey, no one comes
Mm.
out as witness.
Right.
So there are honor killings. Police will keep searching for it, but no one will come out to provide evidence. Now, in the Western society, the
Mm.
Europeans will actually come out as witnesses if they witness a crime, or at least
Yes.
they are more likely to come out as witnesses. So
Mhm.
this is the problem, and that's how the society starts falling apart. The Indians are big in terms of doing drug trade, for example, um,
Yes.
and that is where the lot of criminality of Indians come from in Canada.
Mhm. So you're basically saying school by school, area by area, it's going to start sort of devolving at some rate.
You have to fight for civilization. Civilization does not exist in nature. Forest exist in nature. And if someone tells you that a forest is very peaceful and calm and the air is so good, he does not really know what's happening in forest. When you actually pay attention to what's happening in forest, it is non-stop murders and rapes. That's what
Absolutely.
animals do. Okay, that's what animals do. Civilization is a product of fighting for it. You have to have a critical mass of people who rise up for what is right to create a civilization. Now, Rafael, in Canada, maybe it's only 2%. I'm not saying every Canadian is uh, morally structured the right way, but they have a
Yes.
critical mass. If something goes wrong in front of 100 people, there will be two people who will rise up and say, hey, stop this craziness. In India, I tell you, there could be 10,000 people and not one person will stand up to protect you. I
Absolutely.
remember, I
Yeah, go on.
remember when I used to take a air-conditioned bus in India from one city to another at one point of time. Those were the
Yeah.
days when Ramayana and Mahabharata used to run on the television on Sundays. So the bus
Mhm.
driver would stop the bus to let
Oh,
people watch Ramayana for 1 hour before he carried on.
so
And I said,
crazy.
no, you can't really stop the bus. People
Mhm.
were prepared to beat me up and they were prepared.
Yeah.
Everyone said that, listen, we will tell the authorities that you did not stop the bus engine failed. So that's how lie.
Mhm.
I mean, you're watching Ramayana, you're watching something supposed to be spiritual, and all you're backing it up is on the basis of lies and fraud.
Absolutely. Brute force. Brute force. That's what we believe in here. It is crazy. Okay. What do you think? This is a controversial. No, not controversial, actually. It's a really weird question. What do you think is the solution to it? Because me and my friend here, we sit and discuss this all day. And I've discussed this with so many people and NRIs. And they're like, there is no solution. Go abroad, okay, or go to a convent school, send your kid to a convent school, go abroad, and just change. You cannot be like this in India. So what you think there is a solution? Like, could there be a serious dictator, or somebody like Yogi, for example, Yogi Adityanath he's doing it in a very feudal way, but he's trying something. I also feel Narendra Modi is trying something. So what do you think is the solution to this?
Um, well, so the way things exist, the only solution for a sane minded person is to get out of the country. You could
Mhm.
go to even Malaysia or Thailand is an improvement on India. Even Sri Lanka is a massive improvement on India. If I were living in India, I would move to many of the countries without a thought compared to
Right.
what happens in India. I don't see any future of India at all. In fact, everything is getting worse. And as I said to you earlier, since the time the British left the country, everything has become worse and worse.
Yes.
And now we have a prime minister.
That's the reason.
Now we
Even
have a
people.
prime minister. Now we have a prime minister who was born after the British had left. So we have
Yeah.
sudden break from the past that the British provided to us. And now we have this all false propaganda about what the British were like today. But talk to an older person in Mumbai, for example, an older person in Delhi, and that person will tell you how much respectful the British were towards the citizens. They were extraordinarily honest in how they dealt with Indians. Now,
True.
given
True.
that the British have
No.
left and there were about 30,000 British ruling this country at any point of time, what India ideally needs is about 30,000 to 100,000 best people from around the world to come and occupy the top positions of power in this country. Now, there's nothing wrong about it. Dubai does it, Hong Kong does it, uh, Singapore does it. Bring the top people, bring a prime minister, pay him $20 million a salary a year. Bring a good guy to run this country, not a brain dead, uneducated junkie who is full of envy and hatred. But that is not going to happen, Rafael. There's no.
Even Modi, no, we'll talk about that, right? So even Modi, for example, right? I mean, he's got the country, right? But even he is aging like nobody's business, And I feel he's aging because even though let's assume that he has a vision for India. Let's say he wants to make the roads better, or he wants to do something, anything you do, somebody's stopping you. And at being that guy at that level where everybody listens to you, or we think everybody listens to you, even he's aging, like I don't know, he must have aged like 20 years in this whole thing. So even that guy does not have the power to do whatever he wants, let's assuming he has a vision.
Well, the assumption is extraordinarily erroneous. There is no way for a good person with a vision to rise up in power in India. Not a single person like that can rise up into power in India. Now, when you watch Modi, look at his surroundings, look at the walls of his house, the background, and you realize that the cables are hanging, the walls are badly painted. Okay, because government services are provided by this public works departments or municipal corporation or whatever corrupt departments those are, and what you have is extraordinarily dysfunctional people, unskilled people, low quality corrupt people dealing with your
Yes.
providing environment for you. Your security officers are corrupt people as well. I mean, they come from the same society. So you cannot trust anyone within your circle. So you
True.
are correct
And-
that even if a good person came to power, how would you bring any change in this country, because you don't really have skilled people in the country. Now, here is a good way to think about it. Here's a good way to think about it. If you have run a company or an organization of 5 people, you know how hard and impossible it is to control corruption and make sure that they do the right thing. Running 5 people is impossible in this country. How can you manage this country? So uh, even if you had vision, which itself is an extraordinarily erroneous assumption, because there's no way you can get a visionary rise into position of power in this country, in India.
Right. Hmm. Because even once Modi had, normally he's giving his stuff, like he's just talking, all PR stuff. And one day he got really candid. He's like, even I have to wait until 2 o'clock, call that IAS officer, arey wo hua kya? So even a guy with whatever vision you are talking cannot achieve or is trying hard to get stuff done, through at least the legal way that we know of.
Well, Rafael, firstly, let me say you have a soft corner for Yogi Adityanath and Modi. And that's
No.
an erroneous position to start with, because the only kind, so psychopaths rise up in power in the Western society as well, but they are
Mhm.
restrained by the moral structure of the society. The psychopaths in India are completely unrestrained, and they are,
Mhm.
the worst problem is not psychopathy or corruption. The worst problem is extraordinarily low IQ and
Mhm.
complete brain dead way of their thinking, and that the fact that they are filled with envy and hatred for other people. So there is,
Yeah.
so you, if you at all think that these people can bring any change whatsoever in this country, is completely wrong.
Mhm. No. My point is that even if you really want to do a bad thing, right, it is so difficult to do it. Like, anything, just moving people in any direction is an effort, it actually ages you. So, yeah, I mean, like, you're right, you're right. It just does not
and
work
and
in
and
any
that is the
direction.
problem, and that is the problem with the fact that Indians are so immoral, they are not committed, they are backstabbers, and the
Mm.
moment you are away, they stop working. And that happens even in the top positions of power in this country. That is why they don't trust anyone. The only way the prime minister can secure himself is by blocking the roads and having 5,000 policemen standing to guard him, because he can't
Oh,
even trust his policemen, so he has to keep everyone away to protect himself.
yes, absolutely. That is so true. Okay, so basically, India is ungoverned, right? I'm getting that from you, that we are the kind who cannot be governed. But can you tell me? Can you give me three reasons why? Like just general reasons, like shooting in the breeze. Like, for example, I'd say one of the reasons is the heat, because the global South in general is very, it's just the heat that you're very demotivated. Of course, Indians have much more reasons. So what are those other reasons?
Well, I think the biggest reason is Indians. Indians have no. Indians are tribal people. You have to really understand what India was like when it was ruled by Indians. So you have to
Yes.
go to the pre-Persian and pre-Mughal era to understand what Indians were ruled by. And that's what we are going to ultimately get to once we have destroyed all the institutions and infrastructure left by the European colonizers. So the biggest problem of Indians is Indians, and if you somehow replaced Germans with Indians overnight, I tell you, India will become a great tourist destination. People will love coming here for the beaches and the sun and the wonders of Himalayas and uh, you know, uh, so there's so much India can offer, but because we are Indians, nothing will happen. That's truly the biggest problem of this country.
Yeah, someone told me I love India, but I hate India. I so agree with that. Okay, so I'm going to ask you, what do you think about a random question? What do you think about the science of Indian superstition? There was this mother who told me, she's like, I love wearing my Mangal Sutra. And she has a daughter. And she's like, I love wearing my Mangal Sutra. And it has health benefits also. I'm like, okay, if it has health benefits, why don't you make your daughter wear it? And she was speechless. So what do you think about the science of Indian superstition?
Well, you this is very interesting, Rafael. You talk with, and so what I do as a profession is I interview managements and directors of companies to understand the quality of managements in companies. That's what brings me
Mhm.
money. Uh,
Right.
I talk with Indians, and within 2 minutes, I figure out that they will have said 5 sentences which are mutually contradictory. They lie
Mm.
non-stop. Indians lie
Right.
non-stop. Uh,
Right.
and they don't even understand that they should at least lie in a coherent way. They lie, and then 10 seconds later they say something completely contradictory. Now,
Right.
I have nothing against certain rituals. As long as Mangal Sutra is a symbol of your commitment to your husband, I think it's a great ritual. I'm an atheist, but I think some of the rituals that are followed in Islam or in Christianity or among Hindus or Jains, I'm perfectly fine with them. You need a way for people to come together for and share a commonality among themselves. I have nothing against the rituals, but when it becomes materialistic, it becomes a problem. Now, what this woman told
Mhm.
you was one thing was her closeness with commitment to her husband, but she now looks at it as a materialistic thing, which is that it will improve her health or it will give her some benefits. So that is again the focus of an Indian is food and sex, and maybe a more sophisticated version or combination of food and sex, which is resource acquisition.
This awesome. Yes, makes sense. Right. So okay, cool. So all right. I have a controversial question now. Do white people have a natural right to rule the world?
No, no one has the right to rule the world, but everything is hierarchical. You don't put your dog as the manager of your household.
Mm,
You have your pets. Everyone has a position in life. There's a
mm.
natural hierarchy. So no one has the right to rule the world. In fact, anyone
Oh,
who thinks he has the right to rule the world is exactly the person who's completely unfit to rule the world. We
fair
get
enough.
into
That,
positions because that's what we are competent in. You went to a medical school, for example, and you are a doctor, and I respect you. I would go come to you as a doctor. I'm a financial advisor. You will come to me respectfully as a financial advisor. That does not mean that this morning when I come to your medical clinic, I would call you sir, and when you come in the evening to get financial advice, you would call me sir. It's not that I'm higher or you are higher. We are exchanging our competencies, and a
mm,
CEO of a company should look at himself as a service provider to his subordinates. We are all independent. I have never seen myself as an employee of a company. I don't see people who work for me as employees of mine. They are people I work with. We do different things. And that is why Western society does not crave as much for status positions as Indians do. You want to become assistant manager and then senior assistant manager and then manager. And this thing goes on and on in this country, in India. Whereas Western society are uh, the hierarchy is natural, it's organic, which means if you have more competencies, people will respect you for your competencies. So no, white people have no right to rule the world. You don't have the right to rule the world, but they are natural people who I should bring in to run my
Mm.
administration because they are competent.
Right, right, right. So, and do you think that democracy, at least the white civilization, or the things that basically it started with the French Revolution, etc., because they worked so hard to earn it, okay, and because they had gone through the Dark Ages and then the Renaissance and everything, because they worked so hard to earn it that they value it more. Is it the hard-earned thing that is more valued?
Well, democracy doesn't work at all. It does not work anywhere on the planet. Democracy is like termite that eats away the innards of the society. Democracy
Uh,
is fundamentally anti-meritocratic. The masses are least competent to decide who should run the society, and it is the masses who decide who runs the society in a democratic country. As a result, you get Kamala Harris and Justin Trudeau or Joe Biden as rulers in the West today. So democracy unnaturally brings down the quality of institutions. So democracy doesn't work. Um, my view is that the Western society had seen its peak about 100 or 150 years back. The Western society has been on a downward trend for the last 100, 150 years, and it is gaining pace, going down very rapidly today because this new concept, a whole new emergence of what is now called wokeism has come into play in the Western society. And the wokeism is all about this diversity, virtue signaling, um, uh, giving positions to blacks and women and people of color. They're obsessed with things which are anti-meritocratic. I have nothing against blacks or women. I just want to interact with people based on their merit, not based on the color of his skin or
yeah.
the nature of the genitals that they have.
Yes, that is true. That's true. So basically, they are going the Indian way, where they are starting a new caste system based on wokeism. Would you say that?
Well, that is why I actually say that wokeism is nothing new. Wokeism is importing or import of third world culture in the Western society, and the third world culture is just low class culture, and low class culture becomes emergent when you have democracy. So the low class part of the Western society is now ruling the Western society institutions. They are the people who run the entertainment industry, and we
Mm.
import in India the low class aspect of the Western society into India. Uh, Western
Right.
society is Western not because of drinking culture or nudity culture. Those were actually primarily pagan values of the third world.
Yes.
That was what countries like India were like.
That is
Raphael,
exactly
I'm
not.
absolutely sure, I'm almost sure that your great, great, great mom walked
Mm.
around topless. When I was growing up in my city, a large number of women used to walk around topless in my city. Clothing was a product of what Islamic rulers and Christian rulers brought to India. So
Right.
India is now importing low class values of the Western society, thinking that those are Western values, but they are actually just originally
Pagan
tribal
values.
Indian values coming back to India, and we are absorbing them fast because we are instinctively inclined to accept and absorb low class values.
Right. Right. Very interesting. Very interesting. Okay, I'm going to ask you one last question. What is your opinion on the Mahabharata? Because the Mahabharata is such a, even then, being an epic, etc., and being organized and reorganized and edited and re-edited, it is such a mess of emotions, such a mess of paganism, and yet we think that our past was glorious in some way, whereas Draupadi was disrobed in front of a open court, and I'm sure she was more than disrobed. So, what do you think of the Mahabharata?
Okay, so Raphael, as a child, I probably read Mahabharata many, many times, and I lost interest in it about 20, 25 years back. So I don't remember all the connections and all the history, but I knew at one point of time all the relationship between all the goddesses, angels, everyone. But let's look at Mahabharata.
Mhm.
The fight was not about between the two sides. The fight was not about moral values. The people who sided with these two, Pandav and Kaurav, were not
Right.
siding with them based on who was correct. They sided with them based on who came to them first.
Yes,
Okay.
that is
Now,
correct.
in Mahabharata, what was it? The top of the eldest Pandav, he he gave
Yeah,
away his wife, for gambling in gambling. Now, what kind of moral values are those? And the fact that
absolutely.
we still continue those things tell us that we are an immoral society. You can go through Indian scriptures, and unfortunately, I have to say, and I'm more of a Hindu than any other religion, because you can be a Christian or a Muslim because you're surrounded by Hindu scriptures. You're culturally a Hindu as a result of it, or at least I am, or I
Right.
was. But what I see in Hindu scriptures is no moral anchoring, and they are supposed to be they are supposed to provide moral underpinnings to a growing child. So would I teach Mahabharata or Ramayana to my child? Absolutely not, Raphael, because that will confuse him morally. He will get morally contradictory and confusing messages subliminally. So you keep them away from Mahabharata and Ramayana. I mean, in Ramayana,
So,
Ram left his wife. Ram left his wife, and then if you really pay closer attention to Ramayana, you realize that, hey, Ravan was probably just a much nicer guy among the whole crowd. So
more efficiently.
this is yeah.
Yeah, seriously, seriously. I totally agree with you. All right. So, do you have any concluding remarks? Because the so I have basically I run one channel which is called anti. It's an anti-natalist channel called Nihilana. Okay, and we believe in we have a position that in general, West India doesn't matter. That having a child is a bad idea. That is one. And secondly, I generally talk to people. I've started something called Black Sheep Academy, where I try and teach Indian morality, where I'm just trying to explain to them, let's learn Western basics because that is the way to go ahead in the world. So, like, communication, for example, or what are relationships, or what is love, etc. So, would you have any concluding remarks for, from an anti-natalist point of view, and from my channel's point of view, where I can explain to my followers that, okay, this is what this guy's talked about all this, and what is your concluding remarks, your general, your one paragraph or whatever.
Well, so if you are a morally good person, I think it is good for you to have as many children as possible, because you want to leave behind as much
Hmm.
moral values in this country and in your society as possible. Now,
Right.
when if you want to train your students to become westernized or become modern in how we perceive these words, the way
Right.
is not to watch Hollywood movies or learn from how the low class in America lives, the promiscuous behavior, the drinking culture, the sluttiness of that is exist in the low class cultures of every society. You want
Right.
to absorb the moral values of the Western society, and that will actually be great for you in your career as well, in
Hmm.
your material acquisitions. You realize that when you have the right moral values, money actually comes to you. Now there's a limitation on how good money is, how much good money can do for you. But money comes to you when you have the right moral structure, and that is true even in India.
Right. That's. I think that those are very good concluding remarks. I'm sure this will be controversial, and but yeah, that's what we are aiming for, and that's what you seem to be. That seems to be your riff, and that also is my thing because I've named this podcast Rudecast. So I think having the first this was with you was amazing because you are among the rudest people I know, and I'm a big fan. So thank you so much for your time, and really, it's really like it was really nice speaking with you and getting a different point of view that most people are just repeating Desh Bhakti. Even NRIs, are repeating Desh Bhakti, etc. So it's like it's so nice, it's refreshing to see someone, who says something like this so openly. So really, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.